Thanks everybody for joining me this afternoon. My name is Michael Wu. I'm the principal and co-founder of Converge Strategies. We're a consulting firm focused on the intersection of clean energy, resilience, and national security. And I'm also the executive director of the Resilient Infrastructure and Secure Energy Consortium, the RISE Consortium. I'm really happy to have you here today for what I think is an incredibly important conversation about the future of electric vehicles for DoD, the future of fleet electrification for DoD and the federal government. I first want to thank the Electric Drive Transportation Association that is co-sponsoring this event. A really important partnership that I think is going to bring a lot of value and a lot of interest. So I want to do a couple of things today. Number one, I want to welcome you. I want to describe a little bit about the RISE Consortium for folks who haven't, who are new members of the RISE Consortium, or folks who are joining us, our partners who are Electric Drive Transportation Association members. I'm excited to pass the ball to Genevieve Cullen, the president of EDTA, to introduce EDTA to RISE members who haven't had a chance to get to know that organization or other government members who may be interested in learning more. But then we're going to have a lot of fast-paced conversation, which, if you joined us for past events, really focuses on taking private sector innovators who are working on really difficult challenges and pairing them with DoD and other government stakeholders who are articulating the next generation of requirements for our energy security, for the deployment of new clean energy solutions, and for, in particular, strengthening the resilience of the infrastructure that feeds our critical national defense assets. So we'll be covering that in three panels. The first panel will focus on the folks who are working on this from really an enterprise level situation, an enterprise level perspective from across the military services and also DOE national laboratories. The second panel we're going to focus on will be on installation level challenges and opportunities. And the third we're going to focus on will be solutions, technology solutions. But I want to get into RISE. So many of you are either RISE members or are EDTA members who maybe haven't heard of RISE, or even if you're RISE members, you may be unfamiliar with the organization itself. So RISE is the first ever consortium of private sector entities dedicated to collaboration with the federal government, in particular with DoD, around energy and climate action. One of the things that we found in my past work with the Department of Defense and extensive work, across government around climate and energy solutions, is that there's a real lack of connection between the private sector and the federal government, particularly around these kind of core issues of energy and climate innovation. And so one of the things that we found was a huge challenge for innovators in the private sector who are working on solutions to our clean energy and climate challenges is they don't want to work with the federal government because it's too slow. What we're trying to create is a central forum where those private sector innovators can collaborate directly with DoD and other federal government officials around the solutions. And we'll be doing the convening, and someday soon we hope to be able to deliver directly contracting opportunities that prioritize and catalyze that kind of innovation. So we think this benefits the government and industry extremely well, and from some particular perspectives. Number one, I think just faster is better. All of us, many of us, I'm sure, have experience struggling with both inside and outside the federal government and DoD procurement cycles. And certainly if you're a small business or if you're a non-traditional defense contractor, it can be difficult to understand how to break in and how to work when you have a solution that you feel confident could address a key challenge that the Department of Defense or US government is facing, especially in these times where we're really prioritizing transformative change. So number one is we'll be able to deploy solutions faster and more effectively. That's good for industry and that's good for the government. Number two is we're really focused on bringing together those folks who haven't worked with the federal government yet, and that's or haven't been deeply worked with DoD, and that's going to be an opportunity for the government to have access to some of these innovative, non-traditional defense contractor solution sets. Folks who are working on the cutting edge of climate and clean energy technology that haven't gotten to work with DoD in the past. Folks who are working at DOE national laboratories or universities or utilities that haven't really deeply worked with DoD on deploying new solutions on their installations. We think, again, that's good for the government because there's a huge energy and climate innovation community that simply hasn't worked with DoD because it's just too challenging and slow and too many requirements are associated with it. We think that's great for industry because they have access to non-dilutive capital to help develop and deploy solutions and validate those solutions. There's a long heritage of military civilian technology crossover. And we think energy and climate is really the perfect example of a place, of a sector that needs that kind of spark of innovation. And then finally, we're creating a huge forum for you to collaborate directly with government stakeholders in some of the ways that you're going to hear from today. And that's good for DoD because they need access to and an understanding of the current state of technologies, but also that's really important within RISE itself. We now are proud to count more than 260 members of the RISE Consortium, which is astonishing since we launched less than 2 months ago. And we have the opportunity to bring those members together and identify complementary capabilities and teams that I think are going to be really important and critical to accomplishing some of the really ambitious goals that we're going to talk about today, for instance, in vehicle electrification and fleet electrification for the federal government. We're also excited to do our first in-person meeting in October as a part of Defense TechConnect. We'll be doing 3 big things at TechConnect, and we really welcome you to join us. Number one is we'll be launching our first ever competition, an innovation challenge, innovation pitches for RISE Consortium members. And many of you have already submitted to the RISE Consortium challenge, and we're really happy to have you. But we have a huge opportunity, I believe, to see some of the cutting edge technologies. And you also will be able to get feedback from government stakeholders and from technical experts on your technologies, and we'll be awarding more than $50,000 in Innovation Challenge Awards. Second, we'll be participating in a half-day member-only meeting, which is going to be the first opportunity for all of us to get together, for us to get to meet and know each other and understand our capabilities and challenges. So that'll be a great opportunity to work together and identify things that we want to work on together over this next year, 5 years, decade plus, which is what this is going to require. So if you haven't joined RISE yet, here's the good news. It's free and it's really easy to join. You can join at rise-consortium.org. There's a tab that says how to join. It's about a 1-page membership agreement, and we would certainly welcome you. Before I introduce Genevieve, I just want to say a couple things on just logistics. Number one, as you probably have seen, this session is going to be recorded, and everybody who registered and attends the session will receive these videos in roughly a week or so as we format them. Number two, if you have any questions, we'll try to incorporate questions in the Q&A, but use the Q&A feature in Zoom. We're trying to keep the chat feature open for any technical issues. If you are experiencing technical issues, please work on the chat for those. And then finally, we'll be sending out a survey at the end of this. So we request that you fill out that survey. Your feedback is incredibly important to the future of our programming. We've been running these roughly monthly webinars and had great attendance. But we want feedback on what we can do differently to answer your needs and interests. So moving forward and how we build that programming is really up to you all. So with that, I'm really happy to introduce Genevieve Cullen. She is the president of the Electric Drive Transportation Association. Genevieve has a long career of really impressive nature, both in executive agencies and the US Senate. She's been leading EDTA, I believe, since 2015. And so we're really proud and happy to have her as a co-sponsor of this program on an issue that she knows a ton about and is working on very fervently. So with that, Genevieve, please tell us a little about EDTA.
Thanks, Michael. We are happy to be here, and I really appreciate the opportunity to introduce you all to EDTA and maybe to locate the conversation about electric transportation and the opportunity at DoD in the larger electric transportation landscape. So I was just going to take a couple minutes to tell you who we are, the work we do, and talk a little bit about where the marketplace is and you know, what's available and what's coming. Are folks having trouble hearing me? Are you all right?
Genevieve, I can hear you fine. And just let me know when you want to move to the next slides.
Okay, great. So just basically EDTA, we've been working for more than 20 years as a cross-industry trade association representing the entire value chain of electric transportation. My members include vehicle manufacturers, everything from motorcycles to cars to trucks, electric utilities, companies in the component and materials supply chain, as well as infrastructure and other deployment entities. So we are actually an extremely diverse and competitive group of members who share one commonality, that is the view that the future is electric. And as a trade association, our work is focused almost entirely on connecting our members to policymakers, to their suppliers, and to their customers. And I think if you would move us to the next slide, it shows to show the sort of the scope of our policy work. So in the policy arena, we are focused roughly in these 5 areas, which encompasses a lot of underlying policies, but the basic buckets are these. We're focusing on scaling the passenger vehicle market, accelerating commercial fleet adoption, expanding infrastructure at every level, from residential to interstate fast charge, building a 20th century power sector that can not only serve but benefit from electric transportation, and advancing next generation technology and building out the supply chain so that we keep increasing capacity, reducing cost, and expanding the performance of electric transportation options. So I guess the question for you all who are charged with, no pun intended, electrifying your fleets, the question is, so how are we doing, right? And if you, Michael, would you share that next timeline slide? So what you're looking at, and this I know is a little challenging to read, but it's more useful as just to get a sense of the overall trajectory of the electric transportation market. This is a timeline of automaker announcement and investments and their plans for electrifying their fleets. Now, obviously, the electric transportation ecosystem is more than just the vehicle side, but this is a pretty good proxy for where the market is headed over the next 2 decades. When you're looking at, you know, if we're starting over here at the beginning in 2021, it's important to know that we recently hit the 2 million vehicles on the road milestone in the EV marketplace. There are more than 50 vehicles available today, and by the end of this model year, there'll be dozens more. I think 25 more are slated to come to market before the end of the year. There are also more than 43,000 public charging facilities. This doesn't encompass workplace or home or any private charging, but according to DOE, which tracks these things rather effectively, there are 43,000 and change public charging facilities, and that number literally expands every day. Still, we're a small percentage of the market, and we're a large part of the administration's plan to get to net zero. So we have a lot to do, and we're poised to do it. So I think it's important to just take a moment and talk about what's behind those market stats. For one, we see technology advancing fairly rapidly. Performance is increasing and products are diversifying. We're seeing vehicles with expanded range and duty cycle capabilities, and we're seeing a lot of growth in the medium and heavy duty segment. We're also seeing multiplying infrastructure options. In that 43,000 public chargers, we used to, just a couple years ago, when people talked about fast charge, they meant 50 kilowatts, and now they mean 350 kilowatts. So the technology is changing rapidly. The options are changing fast, and we're seeing more and more, and I think we'll see later in this conversation, the capability of integrating charging into larger energy solutions. And that's a really exciting development. So, and at the same time, as an organization, what EDTA is doing is we're bringing all of the stakeholders together to be part of efforts to map out a comprehensive and coherent infrastructure network. Not a small task, for sure. So at this moment, while the technology is maturing and markets are expanding, we also need to get the policy right. As the people in this room probably know, there is unprecedented policy pressure to accelerate the energy transition, and it's coming from many directions. It's climate change, it's competitiveness, it's job creations, it's livable communities, it's fuel savings. Name it, there's a reason to do this. So among the more powerful policy levers are using the federal fleet as a market of first resort. It is a great place to begin. That doesn't mean it's easy. So that's why we are so excited to be part of this conversation, to link up our members and our larger membership with the RISE Consortium. And I'm excited to learn what the panelists have to say and see if we can't find solutions and build the templates for the larger effort. So thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you, Genevieve. Really appreciate your comments. I think there's just a million ways in which our work can be mutually reinforcing. And I think that we'll look forward to really reimagining what this energy system and transportation system looks like in the future, and we'll be doing that together. So I'm really looking forward to this partnership and continuing it moving forward.
Me too.
Awesome. Thank you so much.